My wife betrayed me with our attorney, stealing $250, $0 of our savings during the divorce, then filed false property claims to claim our house and our inheritance. Now she's using the court to ruin me financially. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of everything that's happened. It all started with little signs, you know. Small things that I brushed off at first. Her phone buzzing late at night, her suddenly being more secretive about her texts, and her always seeming distracted when we were supposed to be spending time together. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed with work or some personal issues. She was always bitchy about something, snapping at me over the smallest things, but I figured that was just her being difficult as usual. Then came the real warning signs. She started canceling plans last minute, claiming she had work emergencies or family issues, but I could tell she was lying. Her attitude toward me changed too. She was colder, more dismissive. She'd go out with her friends and come back late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. I noticed her phone was always locked and she'd hide it when I entered the room. It was annoying, sure, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Things got worse when I stumbled across an email on her laptop. I was just trying to print some documents for work when I saw her open her email account. There was a message from someone named Jake, and it wasn't just a friendly exchange. They were talking about how they'd meet up later, how she was planning to sneak out after I went to bed. My stomach sank. I knew deep down that she was cheating on me. I wasn't stupid. I'd seen her flirt with guys before, but this was different. This was concrete. She was planning to cheat on me behind my back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was I blind? I started noticing small things, her disappearing acts, the way she'd suddenly be too busy to talk, her getting all defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. I even caught her deleting messages on her phone once, hurriedly trying to hide something. The worst part was knowing I'd been blind to it all, trusting her when I shouldn't have. We built a life together, saved for a house, had a future planned out. And now I found out she was sneaking around with some guy named Jake, who, by the way, was a total sleazeball, probably just some guy she met at her job or through her friends. I confronted her that night. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I knew everything about the emails, the late nights, the secret calls. Her reaction was just what I expected. Denial, denial, denial. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and then, get this, she turned it around on me. Said I was the one who was distant, that I wasn't paying enough attention, that I was too focused on work. She had the nerve to call me insecure and possessive, like I was the one at fault for finding out she was screwing around. She even tried to manipulate me, saying she was under a lot of stress and that I was overreacting. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, stupid. How could I have missed the signs? How could I have trusted her after everything? It was like I'd been living a lie, and now I was left with this gaping hole inside. I felt angry, so angry I wanted to scream. I was furious that she'd lied, that she'd stolen so much of our money during the divorce, 250 to be exact. She drained our savings, just took it all like it was nothing. I later found out she'd been funneling money to her attorney, probably to cover her tracks or to buy her silence. And all the while, she's claiming she's the innocent victim, that I'm the one who's paranoid. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to yell, to accuse her of everything, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. All it would do is make her more defensive, more manipulative. So I kept quiet for a while, trying to process everything. But deep down, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her keep using the court to steal from me, to claim our house and inheritance. She's already filed false property claims to try to take everything I worked for. That's when I realized this was no longer just a betrayal. It was a full-blown attack on my life. I started digging into our finances, looking for the truth. I found out she'd been secretly transferring money to her attorney, who's been helping her with these false claims. I discovered she'd been lying about her assets, about her income, about everything. She's using the courts to ruin me financially, to take what she can and leave me with nothing. It's like she's playing some game, and I'm the losing pawn. Every day I wake up feeling more betrayed, more hurt, and more determined to fight back. I don't know how this story will end, but one thing's clear. I have to find a way to stop her before she destroys what's left of me. After discovering her affair and the money she'd stolen, I felt like my world had been turned upside down. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, legal, everything. I started noticing the small cracks in her story, the inconsistencies she kept trying to hide. She told me she was under stress, that the affair was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at Jake, the way she texted him behind my back, and the way she lied about her whereabouts. It was clear she'd been planning this for a while. I decided I couldn't just sit around and let her keep pulling the strings. I needed a plan, something to fight back, something to expose her true intentions. It wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about stopping her from taking everything I had worked for and making sure she paid for what she'd done. I started digging into her financial records, bank statements, and legal documents. That's when I found out she'd been funneling money into her attorney's account, probably to pay him off or to cover her legal fees for her false property claims. She'd already managed to file papers claiming rights to the house and our inheritance, even though I had all the legal documents to prove it was ours. One night, I sat down with a glass of whiskey and looked through everything I had gathered. I realized she was trying to screw me over big time. She was using the court system to drag this out, hoping I'd get tired or just give up. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I knew I needed to get ahead of her to turn the tables. I contacted a lawyer myself, someone who specialized in divorce and financial disputes. I told him everything I knew about her affair, her lies, her theft, and her false claims. I wanted to build a case, not just for divorce but for her to be held accountable for her actions. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, smiling when she needed to, pretending to be innocent, even accusing me of trying to control her or gaslighting her. She played the victim, as always, even though I had the proof of her cheating and stealing. She's a master manipulator, and I knew I had to be careful. I started recording our conversations, saving emails and gathering evidence. I knew this wasn't just a matter of hurt feelings anymore. It was about justice. One day, I caught her in a lie about the money. She claimed she only took a little, that she needed it for emergencies. But I found out she drained most of our savings, 250, without telling me. I confronted her, and she spun some bullshit about how I was controlling and that I didn't support her dreams. That was her go-to line, blame me for everything. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I was furious, not just at her betrayal but at how she'd used the court system to make her move. She'd even gone as far as claiming our house and inheritance are hers, lying through her teeth. That's when I decided to fight back legally. I filed for divorce, but more importantly, I filed a motion to freeze her assets and investigate the money she'd stolen. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. I also started gathering witnesses, mutual friends, anyone who could testify to her lies and manipulations. It was a brutal process, but I knew I had to do it if I wanted to come out of this with some shred of dignity. Throughout all this, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, but also a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind for too long, trusting someone who only saw me as a stepping stone or a bankroll. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who was selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything I built. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it sooner, how I let her get away with so much. But now I was determined to fight for what was left, to expose her lies and to get justice. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not like this. Not without a fight. After I started taking concrete legal steps, everything began to escalate. She was no longer just lying and cheating. She was actively trying to destroy me financially. I could see it in her eyes when she showed up at court, her bitchy smirk, her dismissive attitude like she thought she was untouchable. She kept claiming she was the victim, that I was the one harassing her, that she had done nothing wrong. But I had the evidence, bank transfers, emails, witness statements, and I was ready to expose her lies. One day I got a call from my lawyer. He told me she had filed a motion claiming the house and inheritance were hers, that she was entitled to everything because of some fake contributions she made, even though all the legal paperwork clearly showed they belonged to me. She even went as far as claiming I'd been abusive, completely false, of course. I knew she was trying to manipulate the court to turn her lies into legal victories. That's her game: lie, cheat, manipulate, and hope I'd break under the pressure. I decided I needed to counter her moves with a plan of my own. I started gathering more evidence: photos, recordings, financial documents. I hired a private investigator to look into her activities outside of court, just to see who she was really spending her time with. Turns out, she'd been sneaking around with multiple guys, not just Jake. She'd been meeting up with some sleazeball at a hotel on the weekends, probably trying to cover her tracks. Hearing that made my blood boil. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and now I was the one paying the price. Meanwhile, her attorney kept pushing her narrative. She was claiming I was trying to control her, that I was jealous, and that she deserved a bigger share of the assets because she contributed to the marriage in her own way. She lied about her income, claiming she had no idea where the money went, that she was just trying to survive after I cut her off financially. But I knew better. I had proof she'd been siphoning money into her attorney's account, funneling cash to cover her legal bills, and even paying for her side affairs. She was using the court system as a weapon, trying to take everything I owned. One night I finally found the courage to confront her directly. I called her out on her lies, told her I knew about her cheating, her theft, and her manipulations. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. I've done nothing wrong." But I had the evidence: screenshots of her conversations, bank statements, witness testimony. I told her I was filing for full custody of the truth, and I was going to fight her in court until she paid for what she'd done. That was the turning point. I realized I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling helpless. I started reaching out to people who knew her, mutual friends, her, to gather support. I also spoke with other attorneys, trying to find the best way to challenge her claims and protect myself. The legal battle was brutal, and I knew she was counting on me to give up, but I refused. I had to stand tall, even if it meant losing some sleep or risking everything I had. Every day, I felt the weight of the betrayal more acutely. I'd been married to this woman for years, and now I was learning she'd been lying to my face the entire time. She stolen our savings, lied to the courts, and was actively trying to destroy me financially. It was like she was playing some game I didn't even understand anymore. But I also realized something: I was stronger than I thought. I had to be. Because if I didn't fight for myself now, I'd lose everything: my house, my inheritance, my dignity. So I kept pushing forward. I filed motions, gathered evidence, and prepared for the court battles ahead. I knew she'd try to spin more lies, accuse me of all sorts of things, but I had the truth on my side. I just had to outlast her, stay one step ahead, and not let her manipulate the system to her advantage. I was exhausted, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about her cheating or stealing. It was about standing up for myself and making sure she paid for everything she'd done. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to keep fighting. I couldn't let her take everything I built, not without a fight. The court hearings started coming faster after I filed my motions. Each session felt like a new assault, her lawyer spinning more lies, trying to paint her as the innocent victim while I presented my evidence. It was a constant back and forth, like a chess match, and I had to be strategic. I knew she was trying to use the court to her advantage, to get full custody of the house and even claim some of our inheritance, all based on her false claims and manipulations. But I had the truth, and I was determined not to let her win. One day, she showed up at court, looking more confident than usual, wearing a bitchy smirk that made my stomach turn. She was trying to act like she was the victim, but I could see through her act. She was sweating, nervous underneath that fake veneer. She had brought her own witnesses, some of her friends who about how I was abusive, how I was controlling, and how she deserved more because I supposedly neglected her. It was all bullshit, but she was trying to sway the judge with her lies. I had to counter that with facts, proof that she'd been cheating, stealing, and manipulating. I presented the court with the bank statements, showing how she drained our savings 250 without my knowledge. I showed the emails, the conversations with Jake, and her attempts to hide her side affairs. I also brought in witnesses, people who knew her well and could testify that she'd been lying about her activities and her financial situation. The judge listened carefully, asking pointed questions, and I could see that she was rattled. Her lawyer tried to push her narrative, but I could tell the court was starting to see through her. The most intense moment came when I was cross-examined. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a neglectful husband, claiming I'd been distant and unloving, trying to justify her theft in her affairs. I kept my cool, answered honestly, and laid out the facts. I told the court how she'd been sneaking around, how she'd lied about her income, and how she'd used the court system as a weapon. I emphasized that I loved her once, but her actions had destroyed that trust, and I was only fighting for what was rightfully mine: our home, our inheritance, and the truth. By the end of the hearing, I could see the judge was taking all of this seriously. He asked her some tough questions about her claims to the house and inheritance, and she stammered. She tried to deny everything, but her words lacked conviction. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally going to get some justice. But nothing's ever that simple. After the court session, I was approached by her attorney, who warned me that she'd be filing an appeal, trying to drag this out even longer. I knew she was desperate and that she'd do anything to keep what she stole. That's when I decided I had to dig even deeper, look for more evidence, prepare for the worst, because I knew she wouldn't go quietly. The worst part was the emotional toll. Every day I felt more betrayed, more exhausted. I'd trusted her, loved her, built a life with her. And now I was fighting to save what was left of that life. I kept questioning myself. How did I miss all the signs? Was I blind? Or just too in love to see the truth? But I also realized I couldn't dwell on the past. I had to stay focused on the fight ahead. I needed to prove she was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator, for my sake and for what little dignity I had left. The court's ruling was supposed to come down soon, and I was nervously waiting. I knew she'd try to come back with more lies, more tricks, but I had hoped that justice, real justice, might finally be on my side. I was ready for the fight, even if it had already cost me so much. Deep down, I knew I had to keep fighting, not just for the house or the money, but to reclaim my life and put an end to her lies. Whatever happened next, I was committed to seeing it through. I couldn't let her ruin me, not like this. The day the court finally announced its decision felt like the culmination of everything I'd been fighting for, but also like opening a new chapter of chaos. I sat there in the courtroom, heart pounding, trying to keep my composure as the judge read through the ruling. Part of me was terrified. What if she managed to twist it all again? But another part, the one that had been gathering strength from all the evidence I'd collected, held on to hope. When the judge finished, I heard the words I'd been waiting for. The court recognized that she'd lied, manipulated, and stolen our savings. The judge ordered her to pay back the $250, $0 she drained from our joint account, plus interest. He also dismissed her claims to the house and inheritance, citing clear proof that those assets belonged to me all along. I felt a rush of relief mixed with exhaustion. It was like finally finding some footing after standing on shaky ground for so long. But that relief was short-lived. As I left the courtroom, I saw her outside, waiting with her bitchy smirk, flanked by her new lawyer. She looked at me like I was nothing, like I was just some obstacle she'd overcome. She tried to act confident, but I saw the flicker of anger and desperation in her eyes. She knew she lost, but I knew she'd never admit it. She's the type to fight dirty until the very end. The aftermath was a whirlwind. She started trying to appeal the decision, claiming there was some new evidence she'd find or some technicality to delay paying me back. But I had already prepared for that. I hired an accountant to trace every dollar she took, and I worked with my lawyer to tighten the legal screws. I knew she'd try to drag this out, but I also knew she was running out of options. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the emotional fallout. I felt a mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought so hard and I'd won, legally at least, but the betrayal cut deep. I kept replaying those moments of her lying, cheating, stealing. I wondered how I'd let myself be blind for so long. Trust was shattered and I was left picking up the pieces. I also had to deal with the fallout from her false property claims, court bills, legal fees, and the damage to my reputation. It felt like she'd used the entire legal system as a weapon, and I was just a pawn caught in her game. But I refused to let her see me broken. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I started therapy, trying to process everything: her lies, her betrayal, the money she stole. I also made plans to move forward to protect myself from her future attempts to ruin me. I changed my bank accounts, hired a new attorney, and set up security measures to prevent her from accessing my finances again. I knew she was still watching, still scheming, but I was determined not to let her win. One thing I learned through all this: trust is fragile. It can be broken in an instant, and once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. But I also learned that resilience matters, that even after the deepest betrayals, you can find a way to stand up, fight back, and reclaim your life. I won't pretend I'm fully healed, far from it, but I'm stronger than I was before. I've learned to spot the red flags early, and I won't let myself get again. Looking back, I realize I've been through hell, but I also see a glimmer of hope. Justice may have been slow, but it's finally here. And as much as I wish I could erase the pain, I know it's part of my story now. I want others out there to know: if you're dealing with a betrayal like this, don't give up. Gather evidence, stay strong, and fight for what's rightfully yours. Because in the end, the truth has a way of coming out, and you owe it to yourself to be ready for it. After everything, I've come to realize how deeply betrayal can change you. I used to think marriage was about trust, about building a future together, something sacred. But what I learned the hard way is that some people will destroy that trust for their own gain, without a second thought. My wife, she was supposed to be my partner, my confidant. Instead, she turned out to be my biggest enemy, stealing our savings, lying through her teeth, and trying to take everything I had worked for. Looking back, I see the signs now: her secretive behavior, her lies, the way she dismissed my concerns as paranoia. I ignored the small red flags because I loved her, because I wanted to believe she cared as much as I did. But love doesn't mean blind trust, and I learned that the hard way. Her actions exposed her true nature, and I had to face the brutal reality that the woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who only wanted to use me. The court case was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. It's draining to have your integrity questioned, your character attacked, all while trying to prove that someone you once loved and trusted is actively working against you. I won't lie, it's been a long, exhausting fight. There were moments I wanted to give up, to just walk away from the mess and forget it all. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after she stole that money, not after she falsely claimed our house and inheritance, not after she tried to ruin my reputation. What's left now is a feeling of bittersweet victory. I didn't get everything I wanted. Justice is never perfect, and she's still out there scheming, probably trying to find ways to hurt me more. But I did manage to stop her from taking what was rightfully mine. The court ordered her to pay back every penny she stole, and her false claims to the property were dismissed. That's a win, no matter how small it feels compared to the pain I've endured. I've also learned a lot about myself. I've become more cautious, more aware. I don't trust easily anymore, and I don't take my relationships for granted. I've started focusing on healing, on rebuilding my life from scratch. Therapy helped me process the anger and sadness, and I've been working on forgiving myself for not seeing it sooner. I've realized that some betrayals cut so deep that you can't fully recover, but you can learn to live with the scars and move forward. Most importantly, I want anyone reading this to understand one thing. If you're in a situation where someone you love is betraying you, whether through cheating, stealing, or manipulation, don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to fight back. The system is flawed, but it's also there to protect you if you stand your ground. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's lies or betrayal. You have the strength to survive, to rebuild, and even to find happiness again. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm finally free of her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal. I've learned some tough lessons, but I've also gained a new perspective on what it means to fight for yourself. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about facing it, learning from it, and moving on. And that's exactly what I intend to do.